Hello, everyone, and welcome to Out of the Box's Tech Tuesday. Today's webinar is on eliminating manual data entry and getting AP done 90% faster with MakersHub. We're really happy that you're here today for a webinar presented by Out of the Box Technology and MakersHub. Today's presenters are Lisa McCarthy of Out of the Box Technology and Charlie Howe and Phong of MakersHub. Lisa is co-founder and chief strategy officer at Out of the Box Technology. She consults with thousands of accountants and business owners nationwide, developing solutions related to various Intuit products and services. She's been featured on Google and Intuit's website for her participation in numerous podcasts, client case studies, and interviews, and she is continuously quoted in accounting journals and publications, including a cover story for Accounting Technology magazine. Lisa is a frequent guest speaker at national franchise business and accountant events. Lisa is advanced certified in QuickBooks Enterprise, QuickBooks Online, and QuickBooks Point of Sale. She is also a current member of Intuit's QuickBooks Enterprise Advanced Product Council. Lisa is credited with authoring Intuit's courses for the certification of professional advisors, contributing articles to Intuit's professional advisor newsletter, writing a chapter of Intuit's manual QuickBooks resource guide for professional advisors, and the development of the Intuit endorsed QuickBooks for Accountants seminar. Phong was previously CEO and president of General Plasma, a leading supplier of nanotechnology equipment and industrial automation solutions. General Plasma engineered and manufactured $100 million in R&D and production equipment globally for OEMs in solar, automotive, display, and semiconductors. Charlie has 18 years of Wall Street experience in fixed income structured products and venture capital. He spent more than a decade advising and transacting with the world's most sophisticated mortgage-backed security, commercial real estate, and consumer lending investors. Their expertise is unrivaled, so we encourage you to engage with them with any questions you might have. As for me, my name is Jeanette Schwartz-Rattan. I'm Director of Marketing here at Out of the Box Technology, and I will be your moderator for the day. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. This session is being recorded, so don't give yourself carpal tunnel syndrome trying to take all the notes. The recording will be shared as a resource after the webinar, where you can revisit any key points and information you'd like to review, share with your colleagues, and really dive in together in real time. There will be some time for questions, so as we go through the presentation, if you're hoping to dig in a little deeper into something that we cover or need some clarification, feel free to chat those questions to us and we can address those as we move through the presentation in real time and on to other topics. We've also reserved some time at the end of the hour to field questions as well. A little bit about Out of the Box Technology. If you haven't joined us before, or maybe it's been a while, here at Out of the Box, we are anything and everything QuickBooks. Our growing team of over 50 QuickBooks certified consultants and service providers is your one-stop shop for your QuickBooks needs. From data services like migration projects that we will be talking to cloud hosting, bookkeeping, recurring accounting services, and other business services, our team is on hand for you. As an elite QuickBooks solution provider, we are able to offer you exclusive discounts and pricing, so be sure to connect with us before purchasing QuickBooks. With that, I believe I've covered all of our housekeeping items, so I'm going to hand things off to Lisa so she can get us started.
Sure. Thank you very much, Jeanette. So I just want to, we already got a great intro on Charles and Phong, and they're going to fill you in more on MakersHub. I had the pleasure of meeting them about 6 months ago. I do a lot of consulting for third-party app developers to help them enhance their integration with QuickBooks Desktop and Online. And they reached out to me to get my insights on some of their product features and strategize on ways to overcome certain challenges that are unique to QuickBooks users in both desktop and online. So I developed that relationship and got very excited about their product. It's one of the best I've seen on the market in the AP space, and I've already been quickly recommending it to many of our out-of-the-box technology clients, and they have loved it. The feedback has been phenomenal, and our clients have quickly adopted it. The one thing I love about MakersHub is they really listen to their customers, and when people make suggestions, if it makes sense for the broader audience, they are happy to make it happen in the software. And Phong is brilliant. He can pretty much put anything into play quickly. Don't want to overpromise there, but he's pretty brilliant. So without further ado, I want to pass the baton over to Charles and Phong, and you guys take it away. Excited to share this with everybody.
Super. Thank you, Lisa and Jeanette and the whole Out of the Box team. We can't say enough about the partnership that you guys have helped in our development and the input that you've had to get us to this point. And excited to tell all the folks on the phone today a little bit more about MakersHub and how we have impacted in a very meaningful way both the customers of both Out of the Box and ours beyond. We know that accounts payable is not always the sexiest topic to get people, out of bed, and we appreciate you being here. But hopefully the time savings and data enhancement that we can offer and that we're going to spend a lot more time talking about today and show you in real time is something that's very, germane to your businesses. What is MakersHub? So MakersHub is what we call data-enriched accounts payable operations. And what we mean by that is we enable businesses to connect all of your disparate payables processes. We allow you to capture all of the data from your incoming vendor bills with no manual data entry and to enhance the collaboration in the AP process across your organization. And we accomplish that with a series of features that fit together seamlessly and allow the technology that powers it to kind of fade into the background and allow our users to just focus on the job to be done. And the job to be done is processing your incoming bills with more confidence, more accuracy, capturing better data from it, and being able to utilize that data in more efficient manners. The series of features that allow this to happen that you'll see today in short order are what we call our smart data reader. And this is the technology that is fully proprietary to MakersHub that reads the bills that come in from your vendors. Rule-driven routing, which means who in the organization is seeing bills and ensuring that only the right people in the organization is seeing and reviewing bills that are relevant to that employee. Rule-driven routing also is what allows the data that we're able to extract and pull off your bills to end up in the appropriate place in the accounting system. The data migrating into the accounting system happens by virtue of our very deep two-way integration with QuickBooks, something that Lisa has played a very big role in helping us develop and ensure that it works in a best-in-class manner. And lastly, all the way through to our embedded payments functionality. So ultimately, at the end of the day, the goal of the AP process is to make sure that bills are paid with confidence, and you'll see how we enhance that confidence with our in-house payments functionality. We know this problem intimately because we lived it. Phong, as you guys heard in the introduction, ran an advanced manufacturing company for 15 years, and I'll let him say more about what the motivation was to start an AP company.
Great, thanks guys. So my entire career has been around industrial manufacturing, and it, being talked about, I run a business where we build and deploy a variety of very complex machines across aerospace, display, semiconductor, and in building this system, we were a very strong engineering company, but the system, as you see on the screen, consists of 10,000 parts. And as strong as we are in engineering, operation, manufacturing, we were really struggling with the amount of bills and invoices that are coming from our vendor. We barely be able to keep up with these bills to even pay them on time, let alone trying to understand it or trying to have any sort of job costing or insight from it. And I have spent so much time searching high and low. We were a QuickBooks user, not a lot of system that can really fit seamlessly to the way we do things to solve my problem. And that was the inspiration that really led Charlie and I want to build a more reliable modern system that fit into your workflow and take away all the manual tasks and give you the leverage and insight that I wish I had.
Great. And so to further illustrate this, we'd love to tell you about MakersHub through the lens of a customer story, a real user of ours who we've made a dramatic impact for. And I promise that we won't bore you with a extenuated slide presentation, but the goal here is just to define the problem set that we set out to solve and have solved for our users, a problem set that's likely very familiar to many of the folks on the phone, and then to orient you as to what we're going to show you in the live demo. But the vast majority of the time that we'll spend today is in the actual platform so you can see it happen in real time. So on the screen is Trey Cahill. Trey is the president of Cahill Construction, who's an early customer of ours. And Cahill Construction is a large company that builds retail stores and restaurants for prominent brands all over North America. Since inception, they've built thousands of projects. They've purchased goods and services from tens of thousands of vendors, and millions of dollars of payables flow through their books every year. And I'm going to tell you how MakersHub, in partnering with Cahill, has saved them more than 70 hours a month on their AP time tasks, or on their AP tasks rather, which represents a 90% reduction of the time that was spent previous to engaging with MakersHub. And I know that sounds like a very dramatic, almost unbelievable figure, but hopefully you'll see when we run through the demo of the product how that's possible. Further to the time savings, we enabled Trey's team of project managers to do job costing in near real time, and we enhanced the collaboration across the organization of all things in the payable process. Again, all of which you'll see firsthand. So if you're a business operating, really any business, but acutely so in the physical world, so construction companies, manufacturing companies, construction services companies, again, not unique to those types of businesses, but acute to those types of businesses, bills and receipts are the source of truth for your costs. It doesn't matter what you estimated, it doesn't matter what the inventory management system says. At the end of the day, what matters is what you got billed. And when you get a bill, in a perfect world, there's a series of jobs to be done. And to reduce these to the most simplistic ones, the first is we need to answer, is this bill valid? Is it what we ordered? Did we receive it in full? Did we get billed the right amount? What are the payment terms, et cetera? And it needs to be the right people or sequence of people in the organization who can answer those questions. For many organizations, this is really hard because those people don't sit next to each other in an office or have easy collaboration. There are project managers in the field, there are shipping and receiving clerks in the warehouse, there are AP staff or finance staff, there's outsourced bookkeepings, all of whom need to play a role in accurately answering that seemingly innocuous question of, is this bill valid? The second, once you've validated that the bill is in fact good to be paid and paid in the way that it was sent, is it needs to be attributed at the line item level, ideally, to the appropriate customer and job and accounting codes. So each line item on the bill, what job did I order this for? What customer is this for? And how should we code it to QuickBooks? And then lastly, all of that data, once it's been attributed, should be entered into the accounting system. Again, this sounds somewhat trivial, but for anybody who's lived this problem and has a high volume of bills with a lot of data on those bills, you know exactly how hard this is. And the reason this is important is several-fold. It is the methodology by which you can protect against fraud and invalid payments, right? If somebody is sending you either maliciously or, honestly, a bill that was inaccurate, the only way to ensure that you're not overpaying or duplicate paying is by having that series of protections and reviews in place. Further, even for accurate bills, it's the way that you allow for proper job costing and precise estimating, right? If you are taking what your actual costs were and using that as the basis for your job costing and for your estimating functions, it is in that way that you can balance precision and profitability. But in order to do so, you need that underlying bedrock of proper and complete data. And that's how you understand what is the drivers of your underlying business. Where are costs inflating? Where are you leaking profitability, et cetera? And if you don't have that data, you can't execute those, what should be fundamental tasks. And the reality is that the vast majority of businesses that we talk to cannot execute these fundamental steps. And why is that the case? The reason, put simply, is that bills are hard. And what do we mean by that? We mean two things, really. The first is that the bills themselves are very difficult to extract this information from, give it its proper structure and its proper context. And as you can see, we're going to put some examples on the screen, but for anybody who has lived this problem, you know exactly what I'm saying, and you live this viscerally. Some of these bills are really long. Think about if you wanted to take this Home Depot bill and capture every line item on it. Somebody's sitting in QuickBooks, typing in these descriptions, typing in these SKU numbers, typing in these unit prices. There are 20 line items on this bill, and you're maybe getting hundreds or thousands of these a month. This is just a very onerous manual task today. But beyond just the like sheer volume or length of these bills, some are very complex. So historically, using legacy OCR tools and other AP automation systems, it's been very hard to get a computer to help you with this. And we'll show a couple of examples of this as we go through the presentation today, but here's an example on the screen of a bill that has 4 options for a computer to try to discern what the price is. Do I care about the list price? Do I care about this multiplier? What does that mean? Do I care about this net price? Do I just care about the total? Further, what is it that this item and description is saying? Where does the SKU number reside in this mass of text? Where does the description start and the quantity end? Very hard historically for computers to suss this out and automate away this task, which is why most folks sit and hammer this out on a manual basis. Beyond complexity, I'm sure you guys have all seen this. Some are just a kitchen sink. Some are, multiple scans of receipts that are hard to read or handwritten. Some are, single PDFs with multiple bills in that single PDF where it's very hard to reconcile where does one stop and the next one begin. And then lastly, beyond just the difficulty of the bills themselves, the systems that are part of the AP process are all disconnected. The purchasing system does not speak to the shipping and receiving system, does not speak to the vendor billing system. The vendor billing system is not connected to the project managers who order from the vendors. The project managers don't have visibility through to the accounting system at all times, and the accounting system doesn't speak to the banking system. So even once you go through the process of trying to give this data structure, which today is done on a manual basis, it requires double entry throughout every stage of this process, which is just exceptionally time consuming. And when you put the complexity of the bills on top of the disconnectedness of the systems, the result is that most people just forego what would be optimal, which is capturing all that information at a line item level and attributing it properly. The result for Cahill was, previous to MakersHub, 80 hours a month spent on manual data entry, double entry throughout the entire process like we talked about, and very limited visibility for management to see what was happening from a top-down manner as the process was happening throughout the course of the month. This wasn't a failure of Trey and others to know what was out there. He's somebody who is a very technologically savvy person. He looked at every system a million times, but the reality was, previous to MakersHub, there weren't systems and AP automation systems that really got at the root of this problem. And we do. So MakersHub solves this. And we will move to a demo now to show you exactly what happens that allows for this big cost savings, or excuse me, this big time savings and this big enhancement in the quality and accuracy of your data. And what we're going to do from a demo perspective is just walk through basically the sequence of what happens when our users process the bills that end up in the MakersHub system and how they get there. Do please feel free to ask questions as we go. And I think the moderators will either interject as we speak, which is fine, or we can answer them all at the end. We'll be sure to leave time to do so. But what you're looking at on the screen is basically the summary dashboard for our users. And we delineate between bills and receipts, where a bill is a vendor bill that has to be paid. A receipt is a economic record, a literal receipt that comes from Home Depot. Somebody went, bought something with a credit card. You obviously don't need to pay that, but you need the economic record in QuickBooks. And then accounts payable is after the bills have been approved, reviewed and approved, those are now your outstanding payables. And when users go in to review their outstanding bills, we're going to process these for you in real time, just so you can see it happen. And we'll use a bunch of the examples that we had up on the screen earlier. And it takes about 15 to 20 seconds for our proprietary Wise Vision technology to extract the information from these bills. And while that's happening, I can briefly talk about the technology that powers this. First, we utilize best-in-class vision technology to significantly expand the amount of raw information that we take off of a document. On each PDF, we get roughly 50,000 data points of the characters on the page and their relationship to other characters. And using that data, that very raw data, we then use what's called spatial mapping and proprietary indexing to start to make sense of what it is that's on the page. And all of this has been built specifically to read and reconcile invoice data. We don't try to do bank statements or anything of that nature. All of this has been built with the sole purpose of reading and reconciling vendor bills. So after that indexing takes place, we then expose that partially reconciled data to a series of deterministic language models, basically what you've heard talked about as AI, but AI in a very different form. And it's there that we start to get better and improved context around what is this that is on the page and how should it map and marry to its related accounting fields. And then lastly, no technology is ever going to be perfect. And anybody who tells you that they can do anything with 100% accuracy in this realm is telling you a fairy tale. But our users accrue to a 100% accurate experience very quickly because the actions that you take in MakersHub inform MakersHub as to how you interpret things. So we have what's called one-shot localized learning built in, where when you interact with the system and attribute things a certain way or ascribe a certain name to a certain vendor, all of which you'll see in a moment, this system learns from you. So on the screen is a series of bills, and you can see that some are this yellow hue and some have this green hue and say view invoice group. And what happens in this view invoice group is this is a single PDF that was sent, but we recognize it as having 8 underlying economic records. So you can see that each of these scanned receipts or bills is its own individual economic record, and we're able to parse out which one is which and leave the PDF itself in its original form, as oftentimes that's intentional that it was done, in that grouping. But when you go into the actual user review pane, you'll see that we take you to the relevant document. And if we go back to the original screen, we can take a closer look at what the interface is like for a user. And we'll spend some time going through the details here. So when a user goes in to review their bills, they see the bill itself on the left-hand panel, and then MakersHub's reading of the bill with its associated context on the right. And at this stage of the process, we've integrated with QuickBooks. So that's a process that takes about 10 seconds for QuickBooks Online and 5 to 10 minutes for QuickBooks Desktop. We integrate with all forms of both desktop and online. And when that integration process is happening, what we're doing is ingesting all of your vendor information, all of your chart of account information, all of your items data, all of your customer and job data, so that we can make reference to it and allow you to interact with it directly from the MakersHub portal. So an example of that is the vendor details that you see on the upper left-hand corner of the right-hand panel. And you'll see that the vendor name is Scott Electric USA. And there's a green check mark, and that essentially says, we recognize this vendor, you have this vendor called Scott Electric USA, and we're gonna match these records to that vendor. But the first time that we read this, because the vendor name on the bill is just Scott Electric, electrical distributor, we would read that. And what you would see is that we've read it, quote unquote, properly, but this red question mark says this is an unknown vendor. You don't have a vendor called Scott Electric electrical distributor in QuickBooks. So one of two things is true. Either this is a genuine new vendor and you want to create a new vendor record in QuickBooks directly from here, which you can do with this single click, or we say you have a vendor called Scott Electric USA. Those names are very similar, so we can say with some degree of confidence that this is what you mean. And when a user clicks on that and says, yes, I mean Scott Electric USA, you have now taught the system in the way that I was speaking about earlier, that anytime you encounter that Scott Electric electrical distributor, what I mean is Scott Electric USA. And that's just one example of how we enhance the hygiene of the books. You don't end up with a circumstance where you've got 6 or 7, you've got one vendor with 6 or 7 naming conventions in QuickBooks because somebody wrote it in differently and all the downstream ill effects of that. And that kind of self-learning is built in across the entire system. So you'll see that on the right-hand side is the invoice number, the due date, the payment terms, and the PO number. All of which we've read off the bill and given its proper context to. And using this PO number, called Verizon in this case, because it's listed as the customer PO here, we can go into QuickBooks and say, what customer and jobs do you have that might relate to this invoice? And because you have this job called XYZ Hospital, which is the Verizon automation job, we serve this as an option. And if this is in fact the customer job that this bill is for, with a single click, you can assign that to every line item on this bill. Further, you'll see that all of the bill information is captured here. So at the very line item level, we've captured the SKU information, the description, the quantity, the price. We've given you an option to assign an accounting class or to toggle these as billable. And any of these fields, as Phong is doing right now, are editable. So in a scenario where you have ordered from Scott Electric and you bought 12 things, 10 of them were for one job, 2 were for a different, you can go in and edit any of these as necessary. You can also copy things down. So if I select the accounting class that this is for and say this is for the accounting class we call South, I can just hit this little down arrow and copy this all the way down to the bottom of the page. And there are a lot of nifty kind of idiosyncrasies that we've built into this. Many of our users want to spread sales tax, for instance, across the line items on a pro rata basis to really understand true landed costs. You can do that with this single click of this calculator button here, and we'll make a note of the fact that that is the action that's been taken. And where Phong is highlighting this in the approvals box is where you'll see basically the series of people that the system has determined by virtue of the rules that you, the user, have set up as to who should look at this bill. And we'll spend a minute or two talking about this approvals functionality in a moment. You'll also notice that we've coded this, pre-coded this as miscellaneous electrical. And this blue cog here is essentially saying that the system is referring to a rule that the user has set up. And many of our users, because they operate in physical industries or have some repeatability to their bills, they're ordering from a set of vendors. And oftentimes when they order from certain vendors, they tend to code those bills the same way. And that repetitiveness adds to the amount of time that the AP process takes, and also is error prone, frankly. And using the integration mapping tool that we have down on the bottom right, this is where you can essentially, on a very kind of simple to design and intuitive way to design, put a lot of complexity around, or accommodate a lot of complexity around how the system interprets and codes your bills. And so what you're looking at here is basically a very simple sequential rule system, which says, when I encounter a bill from a vendor name that includes the Home Depot, code the items and expenses to the miscellaneous tools bucket that I've created. This dropdown allows you to reference any of the fields that you have set up in QuickBooks. Again, we're referencing all of this from your QuickBooks, so no re-architecture of your accounting system is required. We can typically get people up and running on this tool in a matter of hours at the most because of the reference that takes place to the existing QuickBooks file. Please interject at any point if there's anything that you want to add or elaborate on. There's not just the option to do this by vendor name. Obviously, there are many cases where I'm ordering from a vendor and I code things different way. And you can do that by item number or by description, etc. So you're looking at basically a rule here in the third that says, when I encounter on any bill a description that includes shipping or handling, code it to the shipping bucket. Same thing with tax beneath. But this can get significantly more granular if you want it to. And for our users who are running inventory-driven or items-driven businesses, you can map this fully to your chart of accounts. And what this essentially allows for is when I encounter a new item that doesn't exist, create that item for me and set it up under the expense account COGS, under the income account, sales of product income, as a sub-item of miscellaneous hardware, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The one beneath this is showing an example of any time that we order from a specific vendor called Belimo, we care about retaining this information at the item level. And so set this up in this different chart of account structure, but as a sub-item of the vendor Belimo. You can apply cost multipliers, price multipliers, et cetera, from here. The same thing can be done with accounting classes. And so I don't want to belabor this point, but the objective of showing you this is that the way that we have designed this can accommodate very complicated businesses with a lot of nuance in terms of how they want to account for and code the things that they buy, but to automate a huge component of that away. An important note is that this isn't a scenario where you just set up these rules and then go away. We've designed the system and we believe that a proper hygienic AP process does require review and proper review. And that's why really our goal is to say, okay, we can mimic and hard code, if you will, or soft code the way that we should set things up from the outset, but somebody still needs to go in and look at this and validate that it's accurate. So you'll see that with all the information here, a user is still going in and saying, yes, this bill is accurate. We did order these, we did receive these. This is the appropriate way to code it, but it can be different people answering those questions. And so in the same way that you would design the coding mapping, you can design the routing for who should be the one to see different bills. And when you first set up your account, if you will, you can add as many users to the platform as you want at no additional cost. And then once those users are on the system, you can design a rule system around who needs to see what bills in that same kind of sequential logic fashion that I just talked about from the accounting perspective. And so what you're looking at here in the approval workflow is basically a series of rules that says when we get a bill where the total is greater than 0, send it to Jen, the office manager. Unless the total is greater than 500, then send it to the AP department. And this is a group of people who represent the AP department, and any member of this group can take an action on behalf of that group. The next rule here is if the bill is in excess of 5,000, then send it to the AP department and Phong, the president. And again, this isn't just totals. This can be done or organized by vendor or by description, and it can be conditional. And this blue hue is saying, okay, when it gets sent to the AP department and the AP department assigns it to a customer or an accounting class in this case, then route it to the project manager PM, right? So in a scenario for more complex organizations where the AP department is taking the first action of coding the bill, and then they want the project managers who are only relevant to the accounting, codification that they've made, the bill will be routed accordingly. And then once it's been routed following those rules, it will not become a valid bill until each necessary person has taken the action of approving the bill. We also allow for basically ad hoc, additions to the approval process. So if you're reviewing this bill and you realize that, hey, I don't have the information that I need, and Phong, if you could scroll up a little on your screen, you can just add in somebody to this conversation. Say, hey, Jen, can you please take a look at this? Can you confirm that we received these? Can you, confirm that it's what we ordered, et cetera? Jen will get an email notification with a direct link to the bill itself, and she can go in and take the action that she's being asked to take. So she'll receive an email that looks like this. She can click this unique view bill link, and it'll bring her directly to this interface that we were just looking at. All of the communications are timestamped here. We also allow you to add documents to this. So for people who want to add, quality assessment documents or packing slips or things of that nature, all of this will be retained here in this modern chat interface. So whomever needs to participate in this process is doing it with a lot of context. So once we've gone through the approval process and all of the requisite approvers have reviewed it, made the changes that they need to, if any, and then approved the bill, we'll show you what happens in QuickBooks and the records that get created. So with a single click to approve the bill, we auto load the next one. And you can see that with everything pre-coded, where there's a lot of repeatability in the coding process, how this can truncate the time that somebody spends on this task significantly. Imagine if you were previously writing all this information into QuickBooks and you were ascribing them and coding them by customer, job, accounting class, et cetera, on a line item by line item basis to your reality today, which is this is all captured here. It's all extracted and parsed for me appropriately. It's pre-coded based upon the rules that I've told it to, and I'm just reviewing. The time savings of 90% becomes a lot more like rational and reasonable to believe when you see this, hopefully. So we've approved a few bills and we've assigned them to customers and jobs, and let's show you what happens in QuickBooks. We don't create any QuickBook records until you have approved a bill, but once you have approved a bill, it becomes an account payable record in MakersHub, and we create a bill record in QuickBooks. And Phong, I'll let you walk through what we're seeing in QuickBooks.
Yeah, thank you. So as you can see, once you review and approve the bill, it's become an active payable, and we seamlessly sync all the data to your QuickBooks. And this is a Scott Electric bill that we just saw earlier. You can see it's already being assigned to the correct miscellaneous hardware, electrical items, all the description. So one of the things that we're trying to do is very typical when you have using the same item in entering bill, so that you don't overcomplicate your setup. You're actually losing a lot of information because when you use a miscellaneous electrical, it would bring up the default description. But when MakersHub pull the data over for you, we put in the right item, but we maintain the description as you read on the bill, so that it's really allowed the accounting team and the AP team to continue to live highly in their QuickBooks with all the contacts and data as if they have the bill themselves. All the description, quantity, rate, amount, customer and job, and accounting class all got properly assigned. You can see down here on the bottom, we gave you a unique link that would link you back to the bill record, where you can then right clicks and go to it. You no longer have to print out these bills, keep record of them, having boxes them around. All your bill would stay exactly with that bill record in QuickBooks, and it would live forever, even when you no longer using MakersHub. Earlier, same thing what Charlie talked about, we allow you to add support documents, and every other record that you added would automatically get pushed and linked onto your bill. And lastly, on the bottom of the bill, we gave you the entire audit trail in the memo line on how this bill got in here. What you see is being processed by MakersHub We tell you exactly when it got fully approved, who upload the bill, who review it, who approve it, what PO number, what for, and all of this information that would take minutes, 10, 15 minutes for each person to go through, now to seamlessly flow through the system. You can see every other bills, the Home Depot one, a very long bill, all got, coded and done or automatically for you.
Super. So if we go back to the MakersHub interface from here, after we have approved these bills and they become valid accounts payable, we have two types of users. There are two users who say, hey, I've always cut checks out of QuickBooks. I want to continue to do so. That's obviously no problem. We have a full two-way sync to QuickBooks. So when you pay this bill in QuickBooks, the way that you historically have, we'll mark one as paid right here. You'll see in a moment that once we pay this bill, MakersHub is going to recognize that we've done so. And when we refresh, this bill record is going to move out of accounts payable and into the archive, marked as having been paid in QuickBooks. You can see right there. The other type of user is somebody who ultimately the goal here is to get the bill paid with as much accuracy, confidence, and ease as possible. And so our full in-house built payment processing capabilities add to this process quite substantially. And we'll walk through exactly what that looks like now. So you have these 5 outstanding bills to be paid, and we offer a lot of flexibility in terms of how you pay them, while the associated accounting records are all getting created automatically for you with, again, very high degree of both data integrity and accuracy. But we also allow, because we're a fully end-to-end integrated system, we allow all of that contextual data to flow seamlessly from the beginning of the process, a vendor sends you a bill, to the end of the process, which is I paid that bill and my bank reconciliation process. And so Phong, I'll let you go through the initial stages of what this looks like, and I'll chime in as you go.
Great, thanks, Charlie. So, as you saw, all the bills that going through the reviewing process become what we call an active account payable. And in the same way that we allow you to design a set of people, a set of eyes to approve a bill to become a valid account payable, we also enable that same control separately for the payment. Meaning, once the bill become valid, they really need to have a different set of user, COO, president, who decide whether the bill should be paid or when it should be paid. And that authorization workflow, you can design it with any sort of complexities or simplicity based on class, account, amount, as you just saw earlier in the bill reviewing process. Now with all the account payable that already have the green check mark, these are vendors that we already have payment, like a verified payment method for. If you don't, we make it very easy for you to add additional payment methods. We allow you to add bank transfer data directly if you already have one. If you want to send a paper checks, we already bringing all the information from QuickBooks, so you can cut paper check directly out of MakersHub. Or we also automate the entire process to allow you to request this information from your vendor, where your vendor don't have to sign up. They can confirm how they want to be paid, and the system take care of itself.
So
now that we have
very quickly before you go on from that, Phong, apologies. So all of this is built with the absolute best-in-class standard of encryption and protection. This is as or more safe than executing these payments via your bank portal. We don't use any third-party payment facilitators. We've built all of this direct integration with our charter bank partners, and there's no incremental additional cost for this. So we don't try to, kill anybody death by 1,000 paper cuts from a payment perspective wise. The software license for the tool covers all payments, both ACH and paper check.
Great. So with the payment information verified, you can select all your vendor to pay them together, right? And to do scheduled payment. because MakersHub were able to read and contextualize the payment term, the due date, we now allow you to actually schedule payment in advance. Oftentimes, it's cutting checks or paying bills is a pretty major process for a lot of these companies where you have to sit and pay every 2 Fridays or every Friday. With MakersHub, once the bill is approved, you can schedule the bill to pay exactly on the due date and authorize it and let the system take care of itself. As you can see, by default, we try to combine bills from the same vendor together and cut a single check. For example, this one from Scott Electric. But we also make it very easy for you to, a lot of time, it's confusing for the vendor when you combine too many payments. With a single click, you can also split this payment into, hey, I want to pay each bill on its own payment, so everything clean and clear. With a single click, you can do that. And one last thing to point out is it's oftentimes very, very hard for the AP team to keep up and keep track of the payment term that we'll offer on a bill. This bill from Brusco, for example, this is a bill where the vendor will offer you 10% discount you pay in 10 days versus the typical 30 days that you pay them. With MakersHub, we actually would tell you exactly what the due date is, which is the net 30 days. But we also inform you that, hey, you have a 10% discount, you can pay early. And with a single click, you can capture that discount without having to do any additional work. We automatically create the credit record for you on your bill, reconcile your bill for you, and allow you automatically change the due date so that you will enjoy that discount when you have the cash flow available. Once you determine, the payment date that you want to pay, what bank account it go out of, and what bank account should it go to, single click the schedule payment. All this account payable will flow out of the active account payable and become an active payment record. For every payment that we execute on MakersHub, we do not delay payments. So on the same day that the payment are being scheduled, your vendor get paid and settle the following days. For checks, it's also get printed and mailed the following days. So it's allow you and your vendor to get each other paid on the most optimal term. And lastly, as Charlie mentioned, once the payment is complete, we spend a lot of effort to contextualize, the entire thread from when the bill enter your system to when your bill actually being paid. So for a, let's say it's a check, we tell you exactly what the bill look like, who approved it, when it will approve, what payment account go out of, where it got paid to, who authorized the payment, and the ACH transaction record, along with the trace number, and all the information about the check that being mailed to your vendor. When it was printed, when it was mailed, and when it got mailed, you can actually view the record, the copy of the check directly on MakersHub, and when it was deposited. And when it got deposited, you can also see the front and the back of the check that got cashed.
So just to be clear about what's happening here, we've designed what used to be a one-legged transaction. The customer, had to write a check to my vendor because he or she wants to be paid by paper check. Many of our users say, I want to operate on a digital basis, but I want the flexibility to have my vendors be paid the way that they want. And so we've disaggregated that one-legged transaction to a two-legged transaction where the ACH debit that you see on the left is from client to MakersHub, and then a simultaneous issuance of a check to the vendor. And all of the information that you would need when the vendor calls and says, hey, I sent you this bill, I haven't received the payment for it, where is it? Is here at your fingertips for anybody within the organization that you want to be able to view this information. So this basically is really intended to give everybody at the organization, to arm everybody at the organization with as much contextual information about every individual payment as is possible. This is how you can keep your vendors happy. This is how you can keep people at the business informed about where things stand and arm them with the information that they need so they're not running around trying to, chase down various payment statuses and that sort of thing. So
and last thing to point out is when payment being made, we automatically create a payment record that tied to exact bank account with payout as if you have cut the check inside QuickBooks. Who it go to, the bill it will pay for, and the same thing with the memo, when payment will process, who authorized it, and when it will authorize.
So we recognize that this is just a fire hose of information, and I'm sure not all of it sunk in. We're very happy to do these conversations on a more bilateral basis with anybody who wants to spend more time on specific attributes of what we do. But the goal is to just introduce you to what's possible today, given both the power of the underlying technology that we've created, and then the elegance and comprehensiveness of the workflow software that we've built around that technology. And so with that, we're happy to take any questions that came through as we were talking. If any questions come up after the end of the webinar, you can feel free to connect with your out-of-the-box representative, and I know Lisa and team will give you instructions as to how to do that. But thank you all very much for joining us, for listening. Hopefully this at least gives some sense of what is possible and how dramatic an impact it can have on your AP process. So thank you again. Happy to take any questions if there are any. And we appreciate the audience and the attentiveness through this hour.
Thanks, Charles and Phong, for this incredibly thorough overview of what is a very robust solution. We did have one question from a user, if they could implement an automation that automatically assigns a class based on information contained within the purchase order number. Can you speak to that?
Yes, and so very similar to the way that we allow our user to assign, in the integration mapping design, where it go from an item, a chart account, you can also do the same thing with accounting classes based on the vendor name, the item number, description, where do you want it to go, whether it's an item or an expense. Very easy. We're already bringing all your accounting classes, and you would design that rule in the very similar way that we showed earlier.
All right, great. Well, it looks like that is all the attendee questions for now. Again, as Charlie was saying, should you think of any questions you have later on this afternoon, please feel free to reach out. I am going to put our information up on the screen here. If you want to talk to anybody about MakersHub, ask additional questions, maybe get started with a trial run of the product, you can reach out to us either at this 888 phone number or hello@outoftheboxtechnology.com. Just send us an email. Thanks again for joining us, and thank you again to Phong and Charlie for sharing their expertise. As a reminder, this recording will be shared with you later this afternoon. And we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar, QuickBooks Payroll 101. Scheduled.
Jeanette,
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. I don't know if you intended to have the phone number, email address show up on the screen, but it didn't come through for me. If you just want to do that for the benefit of the recording.
Weird. Okay. How's that? Is that good?
Perfect. Yeah.
Sorry about that, everybody. So registration information for that webinar will be included in the follow-up email and is also located on our website. If there are no further questions, I just want to wish everybody a great day and thanks for attending.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeanette.
Thanks.